The dust-covered woman rode into Wilcox, Arizona, on a mare that looked half dead. But the way she sat that saddle told every man watching she could ride circles around them all. It was June of 1884, and the desert heat shimmered off the packed earth Main Street as Victoria Dawson guided her horse toward the livery stable, her eyes scanning the town with the practiced wariness of someone who had learned young that trouble could come from any direction. She wore men's riding pants and a sun-faded shirt, her dark blonde hair braided down her back, and though dust coated every inch of her, there was something about the set of her shoulders that commanded attention. Owen Lancaster stood outside his ranch office at the edge of town, arms crossed over his chest as he watched her dismount. He was 30 years old, weathered by sun and hard work, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of whiskey in lamplight. His foreman, Charlie, whistled low beside him. "That is the horse breaker everyone has been talking about," Charlie said. "The one who worked miracles up in Prescott. Heard she gentle a stallion that had killed a man, made him rideable in 2 weeks." Owen said nothing, but his gaze followed Victoria as she spoke with the livery owner, her gestures calm and precise. He had 5 horses on his ranch that were eating their heads off, too wild to ride, too valuable to shoot. He had tried 3 different horse breakers, all men with big reputations and bigger egos, and every single one had left defeated or injured. The last one had packed his bags after the big bay stallion had put him through a fence. Victoria felt eyes on her back and turned, meeting Owen's gaze across the street. For a moment, something passed between them, a spark of recognition that neither could name. Then she turned away, leading her mare into the stable's cool shadows. "Go talk to her," Charlie said. "What have you got to lose? Those horses are costing you money every day they stand in that pasture doing nothing." Owen pushed off from the wall. "I will see what she has to say." He crossed the street with long strides, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust. Inside the livery, Victoria was brushing down her mare with steady strokes, murmuring to the animal in a low voice. She did not look up when Owen entered, but he could tell she knew he was there. "Heard you break horses," he said without preamble. "I do." Her voice was lower than he expected, with an edge like weathered leather. She still did not look at him. "Heard you are good at it." "I am." There was no boast in her tone, just simple fact. Owen found himself smiling despite himself. "Got 5 horses that need breaking. 3 different men have tried and failed. The last one said they were not worth the trouble." Victoria finally turned to face him, and he was struck by her eyes, a startling green against her tanned face. She was 24, he guessed, maybe 25, with the kind of beauty that came from strength rather than softness. There was a scar along her jaw, mostly faded, and her hands were calloused and capable. "Why do you think I will succeed where they failed?" she asked. "I do not know if you will, but I am willing to pay well to find out. Standard rate plus a bonus if you can make them rideable." She studied him for a long moment, and Owen had the uncomfortable sensation of being weighed and measured. "Show me the horses first. I do not take jobs I cannot finish." They walked together through the town and out to his ranch, which sprawled across good grazing land about a mile from Wilcox proper. The house was well-built adobe, and the barns and corrals were in good repair. Owen ran cattle primarily, but he had always had an eye for good horseflesh, which was why he had bought the 5 problem animals in the first place. They had been sold cheap because of their reputations, and he had been certain he could turn them around. Victoria leaned against the corral fence, her eyes tracking each horse as Owen pointed them out. There were 3 mares and 2 stallions, all young, all with that wild look in their eyes that spoke of poor handling or trauma. The big bay stallion, the one who had sent the last horse breaker to the doctor, stood apart from the others, his ears pinned back. "That one," Victoria said, nodding toward the bay. "What is his story?" Bought him from a man who had beaten him regularly. "He was 2 years old then, half-starved, covered in scars. That was a year ago. I have given him time and good feed, but he trusts nothing and no one." Victoria's jaw tightened. "Some men should not be allowed near animals, I agree." Owen watched her face, seeing the calculation there, the assessment. "So, will you take the job?" She was quiet for another minute, then nodded. "I will. But I work alone. No one in the corral with me, no one offering advice or criticism. You provide food, a place to sleep, and stay out of my way. The bunkhouse is empty right now. You can have it to yourself. I will start tomorrow morning." They shook hands on it, and Owen felt the strength in her grip, the calluses that matched his own. When she rode back into town to collect her things, Charlie appeared at his elbow. "You really think she can do it?" the foreman asked. "I think if she cannot, no one can," Owen replied, still watching the road where she had disappeared. Victoria returned at dawn the next morning with a bedroll and saddlebags that held everything she owned. She had been moving from town to town for 3 years now, ever since her father had died and left her with nothing but his knowledge of horses and a reputation for being difficult. Women were not supposed to do this kind of work, were not supposed to live this kind of life. But Victoria had discovered she had no talent for anything else, and no desire to trap herself in a conventional existence, just to satisfy society's expectations. She settled into the bunkhouse, which was plain but clean, with 6 narrow beds and a pot-bellied stove. She chose the bed nearest the window and stored her gear, then headed out to the corrals. Owen was already there, waiting. "Thought you might want coffee first," he said, offering her a tin cup. "Thank you." She sipped it black and strong the way she liked it. "I will start with one of the mares, the smaller chestnut. She looks like she has more fear than aggression. Whatever you think is best." True to his word, Owen left her alone after that, though Victoria was aware of him watching from a distance as she entered the corral. The chestnut mare immediately bolted to the far side, her eyes rolling white. Victoria did not pursue her, just stood in the center of the space, breathing slowly, making herself as unthreatening as possible. An hour passed. Then, too, the sun climbed higher and sweat began to trickle down Victoria's back, but she did not move. Finally, the mare's curiosity overcame her fear, and she took one step closer than another. Victoria still did not move. The mare stretched her neck out, nostrils flaring as she took in Victoria's scent. "That is right," Victoria murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just getting to know each other. No rush. We have all the time in the world." By the time the sun was directly overhead, the mare was standing close enough for Victoria to touch, though she had not yet done so. Owen appeared at the corral fence with 2 plates of food, setting one on a post. "You should eat something," he said. Victoria backed slowly toward the fence, keeping her eyes on the mare, and retrieved the plate. "Beans and cornbread, simple but filling." "Thank you." "How is it going?" "Slow, the way it should be." She ate standing up, still watching the mare. Owen found himself fascinated by the patience she displayed, the complete absence of ego or frustration. Every man he had hired had approached the horses as if they were problems to be dominated, puzzles to be solved through force of will. Victoria treated them like individuals with their own fears and needs, and he could already see the difference it made. Over the next week, Victoria worked with each horse in turn, spending hours in the corrals doing what looked like nothing to the untrained eye, but was actually a careful process of building trust. She spoke to them constantly in that low, soothing voice, and gradually they came to accept her presence. then her touch, then the weight of a blanket on their backs. Owen found excuses to be near the corrals more often than necessary. He told himself it was because he wanted to monitor his investment, but the truth was he was drawn to Victoria in a way he could not quite explain. She was different from any woman he had ever met, utterly self-contained and confident in her abilities. She did not flirt or simper or play games. She simply was, and there was something deeply attractive about that authenticity. On the 8th day, Victoria allowed the chestnut mare to accept a saddle for the first time. The mare danced sideways, uncertain, but did not bolt or buck. Victoria rewarded her with patient strokes along her neck and soft words of praise. "You are going to try to ride her?" Owen asked from his position outside the fence. "Not today. Maybe tomorrow. She needs to get used to the weight first." Victoria glanced at him, and for the first time she smiled, a quick flash of warmth that transformed her face. "You are always watching. It is my ranch, my horses." "Is that the only reason?" The question hung in the air between them, charged with possibility. Owen cleared his throat. "You do good work. I like to watch good work." "Sure." She turned back to the mare, but he thought he saw amusement in the set of her shoulders. That evening, Victoria accepted Owen's invitation to eat dinner at the main house instead of alone in the bunkhouse. His cook, an older Mexican woman named Rosa, had made chicken and rice, and they ate at the kitchen table while Rosa hovered, clearly delighted to have another woman on the property. "How long have you been breaking horses?" Owen asked, passing her the water pitcher. "Since I was 16. My father taught me. He was a horse trader, worked all over California and Nevada. I traveled with him after my mother died." "What happened to him?" "Got thrown from a bad-tempered gelding 3 years ago. Broke his neck." Victoria's voice was matter-of-fact, but Owen saw the flash of pain in her eyes. "He died doing what he loved, at least." "I am sorry," she shrugged. "It is the risk we all take working with horses. They are bigger and stronger than we are. Sometimes things go wrong. You are not afraid." "Being afraid does not help anything. You just have to be smart and patient and accept that some days you might get hurt." She met his eyes across the table. "Why did you start ranching?" Owen leaned back in his chair. "It is the family business. My father started this ranch 30 years ago, built it from nothing. He and my mother ran it together until she died of fever when I was 12. My father passed 4 years ago, left it all to me. I have a younger sister, but she married and moved to California." "You like it, the work?" "I do. It is hard, but it is honest. I know at the end of each day exactly what I have accomplished." He smiled. "Most days, anyway. Some days I look at those 5 horses and wonder what I was thinking." Victoria laughed, a genuine sound that made Rosa beam from her position by the stove. "You were thinking you could handle them. Most men think that. But not you. I know I can handle them. There is a difference between thinking and knowing." Owen found himself grinning. "You are not lacking in confidence. Confidence comes from skill, and skill comes from experience. I have plenty of both." She pushed back from the table. "Thank you for dinner. It was very good." "You are welcome any time," Owen said, and meant it. The next morning, Victoria rode the chestnut mare for the first time. Owen watched from the fence as she eased herself into the saddle, her movements slow and deliberate. The mare tensed but did not bolt. Victoria sat there for a moment, letting the horse adjust, then gently urged her forward with her knees. They walked around the corral in a slow circle, then another. The mare's ears flicked back and forth, listening to Victoria's voice as she murmured constant encouragement. After 15 minutes, Victoria dismounted and immediately loosened the cinch, rewarding the mare with handfuls of oats. "That is it for today," she announced. "Always end on a good note." She looked calm, Owen observed. "She is starting to trust. That is the hardest part, earning their trust. Once you have that, the rest comes easier. Victoria climbed over the fence with easy grace. I will start working with the bay stallion this afternoon. Owen felt a clutch of concern. Are you sure you are ready for him? He is the most dangerous of the lot. Which is why I have been watching him while I work with the others. I know his patterns now, his triggers. And he has been watching me too, learning that I am not a threat. She wiped sweat from her forehead. Trust me. I do, Owen realized, and was surprised by how much he meant it. Victoria's work with the bay stallion was slower and more cautious. He was bigger than the mare's, stronger, and his trauma ran deeper. The scars on his hide told a story of systematic cruelty, and Victoria felt rage burn in her chest every time she looked at them. But rage would not help him, so she channeled it into patience instead. For 3 days, she simply stood in the corral with him, never approaching, never pushing. On the 4th day, he took a step toward her. On the 5th day, he allowed her to touch his shoulder. On the 6th day, he followed her around the corral like a dog. Owen watched it all with growing amazement. The stallion that had terrorized 3 grown men was gentle as a lamb under Victoria's hands, and it was clear he had formed a deep attachment to her. When she was not in the corral, the bay stood at the fence closest to where she was working with the other horses, watching her with intense focus. I think you have made a friend, Owen said one evening as they sat on the porch of the main house, watching the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold. He just needed someone to be kind to him, Victoria replied. Horses remember everything. Every beating, every harsh word. But they also remember every kindness, every gentle touch. You just have to give them more of the second than they received of the first. Owen was struck by the poetry in her words, the simple wisdom. He had grown up around horses his entire life, but Victoria understood them on a level he was only beginning to appreciate. You should teach. Teach what? What you know. How you do this. There are plenty of people who could benefit from your methods. Victoria shook her head. Men do not want to learn from a woman. They want to prove they are stronger, tougher, more dominant. My way requires admitting that gentleness is not weakness, and most men cannot do that. Not all men. She turned to look at him, really look at him, and Owen felt the weight of her attention like a physical thing. No, she said softly. Not all men. The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with an attraction that had been building since the day they met. Owen wanted to reach for her, to close the distance between them, but something held him back. Victoria was not a woman to be rushed or pushed. Like the horses she worked with, she needed to come to him of her own accord in her own time. I should get back to the bunkhouse, Victoria said, standing abruptly. Early start tomorrow, Victoria. She paused at the edge of the porch, waiting. Owen stood as well, moving to stand beside her. I am glad you came here. She smiled, that quick flash of warmth he was coming to treasure. So am I. By the end of the 3rd week, all 5 horses were saddle broken and rideable. Owen put them through their paces himself, amazed by how responsive and calm they were. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous, and he knew word would spread quickly. Victoria's reputation would be secure, which meant she would be leaving soon. The thought sat heavy in his chest as he watched her work with the bay stallion one final time, putting him through a series of exercises that demonstrated his complete cooperation. The horse moved like a dancer under her guidance, and Owen could see the pride in Victoria's expression, the satisfaction of a job well done. They are ready, she announced when she finished, dismounting and running a hand down the stallion's neck. You have 5 excellent horses now. Treat them well. I will. Owen came to stand beside her, close enough that he could smell the sun and sweat on her skin, the faint scent of leather and horse. When are you planning to leave? Tomorrow, I suppose. There is no reason to stay longer. No reason. The words came out more sharply than he intended. Victoria looked at him, surprise in her green eyes. Owen took a breath, gentling his tone. What if I asked you to stay? To do what? The work is finished. To work with me. As a partner. I have been thinking about expanding, buying more horses, building a breeding and training program. With your skills and my land and capital, we could build something significant, something lasting. He paused, then took the risk. And because I do not want you to leave. I think about you all the time, Victoria. From the moment I wake up until I fall asleep, and in my dreams too. I have never met anyone like you, and I do not want to let you ride away. Victoria stared at him, her expression unreadable. Owen, I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other 3 weeks, but sometimes you just know, do you not? Sometimes you meet someone and everything just fits. He reached for her hand and she let him take it. Stay, please. I do not know how to stay, Victoria said quietly. I have been moving for 3 years. Every town is temporary. Every job has an end date. I do not know how to put down roots. Learn with me. Owen's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. I am not trying to trap you or change you. I am asking you to build something with me. If you hate it, if you need to leave, I will not stop you. But give it a chance. Give us a chance. The bay stallion nudged Victoria's shoulder, and she turned to look at him. The horse's dark eyes were calm and trusting, so different from the terrified, aggressive animal he had been when she arrived. She had helped him heal, had shown him that not all humans would hurt him. Maybe someone could do the same for her. A partnership, she said slowly. Equal partners. I am not a woman who will be told what to do or how to live. I know that. I would not want you any other way. And if it does not work out, if we discover we have made a mistake, then we will deal with it honestly like adults, but I do not think we will. Owen squeezed her hand gently. I think this is the start of something good. Victoria studied his face for a long moment, taking in the honesty in his whiskey-colored eyes, the strength in his features, the hope he was trying not to show too clearly. She thought about the lonely years of travel, the empty bunkhouses and impersonal hotel rooms, the constant sense of being untethered. She thought about the work they could do together, the horses they could help, the life they could build. All right, she said finally. I will stay. The smile that broke across Owen's face was like sunrise, brilliant and transformative. He pulled her into his arms, and Victoria let herself lean into his embrace, feeling the solid strength of him, the steady beat of his heart. When he kissed her, it was gentle and searching, a question rather than a demand, and she answered it by kissing him back with all the pent-up longing she had been trying to ignore for weeks. The bay stallion snorted his approval, and they broke apart laughing, still holding each other. I suppose he likes the idea too, Owen said. He is a smart horse. Victoria rested her head against Owen's chest. We should probably discuss the details, where I will sleep, how we will structure the business, what our goals are. Tonight, we can discuss all of that tonight. Owen kissed the top of her head. Right now, I just want to hold you and be grateful you are staying. They stood there in the afternoon sun, the horses grazing peacefully around them, and Victoria felt something shift inside her chest. For the first time in 3 years, she felt like she was home. That evening, they sat at the kitchen table with paper and pencils, mapping out their plans. Rosa served them dinner and then made herself scarce, but Victoria could see the older woman's knowing smile as she left. We should start by acquiring more horses, Owen said, making notes as they talked. Young ones with potential before they have been mishandled. We can train them properly from the start, build a reputation for quality. We should also take in problem horses, Victoria added. Ones like your bay stallion. There are good animals out there that have been ruined by bad treatment, and they deserve a second chance. Agreed. We can charge premium rates for rehabilitation work. They talked late into the night, their ideas building on each other, creating a vision of something bigger than either of them could accomplish alone. Owen was struck by how well they worked together, how naturally their thoughts aligned. Victoria challenged his assumptions and pushed him to think bigger, while he provided practical considerations and financial realism. "Where will I sleep?" Victoria asked eventually, voicing the question that had been hovering between them. Owen met her eyes. "That is up to you. You can stay in the bunkhouse if you prefer the privacy. You can have the guest room in the main house. Or," he paused, then forged ahead, "or you can share my room if you want to. I know we have not known each other long, but what I feel for you is real, Victoria. I am not playing games or looking for something temporary." Victoria stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dark shapes of the corrals and barns. She could feel Owen's eyes on her back, patient and waiting. "I have been alone for a long time," she said quietly. "I learned to rely only on myself, to trust only myself. Letting someone else in is frightening. I know." Owen came to stand behind her, close but not touching. "But being alone forever is frightening too, in a different way." She turned to face him. "I want to share your room. But I need you to understand that I am going to be difficult sometimes. I am used to making my own decisions, going my own way. I will argue with you. I will disagree with you. I will not be a quiet, obedient wife. I am not asking you to be. I want a partner, Victoria. An equal. Someone who will call me out when I am being an idiot and push me to be better." He cupped her face in his hands. "And I have no intention of proposing marriage after 3 weeks. We will take this at whatever pace feels right. But make no mistake, I want a future with you. A real one." Victoria rose on her toes and kissed him, pouring all her hope and fear and longing into it. Owen responded with matching intensity, his arms coming around her to pull her close. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Come to bed," Owen said roughly. "Just to sleep, if that is all you want. I just want to hold you." But when they reached his room and he closed the door behind them, kissing her again in the moonlight streaming through the window, sleeping was the last thing on either of their minds. They came together with the urgency of people who had been denying their desire for too long, learning the geography of each other's bodies with eager hands and hungry mouths. Later, lying tangled together in Owen's bed, Victoria felt a peace she had not known in years. Owen's arm was heavy across her waist, his breath warm against her neck, and she marveled at how safe she felt, how right this was. "Are you all right?" Owen murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "Better than all right." Victoria laced her fingers through his. "I am exactly where I am supposed to be." The next morning, they began their new venture in earnest. Owen rode into Wilcox and put out word that he was looking to buy young horses with potential, as well as problem animals that needed rehabilitation. Victoria organized the training schedule and set up a proper round pen for gentling work. Word spread quickly about the transformation of Owen's 5 problem horses, and within a week, people started showing up with animals that needed help. A rancher from the next county overbrought a young mare that had been spooked by a rattlesnake and refused to be ridden. A family from town brought a pony that had bitten their 3 previous children and was about to be sold for meat. Victoria worked with each animal patiently, diagnosing the root of their problems and addressing them with her characteristic blend of intuition and skill. Owen watched her work, never ceasing to be amazed by her talent, and found himself falling deeper in love with her every day. They fell into a rhythm, working side by side during the day and falling into each other's arms at night. Victoria moved her few possessions into Owen's room, claiming the dresser by the window for her clothes, and adding her father's old spurs to the collection on the mantel. Rosa adopted Victoria immediately, teaching her to make tortillas and sharing gossip about the town. Charlie, the foreman, was initially skeptical of having a woman as part owner of the operation, but after watching Victoria work for a few days, he became one of her staunchest supporters. "Never seen anything like it," he told Owen one evening. "That woman has magic in her hands." "That she does," Owen agreed, his eyes finding Victoria where she stood in the corral with a young gelding, her voice low and soothing. 2 months after Victoria had first ridden into Wilcox, Owen took her into town for supplies. It was a Saturday, and the streets were crowded with ranchers and townspeople. Victoria walked beside Owen, comfortable now in her role as his partner, though she was aware of the curious and sometimes disapproving looks they received. "People are talking about us," she observed as they loaded supplies into the wagon. "Let them talk. We are not doing anything wrong." Owen lifted a sack of grain into the wagon bed. "Does it bother you?" "Not particularly. I stopped caring what people think a long time ago." Victoria paused. "But you are established here. You have a reputation. I do not want to damage that." Owen set down the crate he was holding and turned to face her fully. "My reputation is my own concern. And honestly, Victoria, anyone who would judge me poorly for being with a woman as talented and strong as you is not someone whose opinion I value. You might lose business over it." "Then I will lose business. Some things are more important than money." He pulled her close, right there on the main street where anyone could see, and kissed her firmly. "You are more important." Victoria felt warmth bloom in her chest. She had spent so long being independent, not needing anyone, that it was strange and wonderful to be cherished this way, to matter so much to someone else. "Owen Lancaster, you are going to make me go soft," she murmured against his mouth. "Good. You deserve to be soft sometimes. You do not always have to be strong." They finished loading the wagon and headed back to the ranch, Owen's arm around Victoria's shoulders, her head resting against his side. The desert stretched out around them, gold and brown and beautiful in the afternoon light, and Victoria thought about how much her life had changed in 2 months. That evening, Owen made his move. They were sitting on the porch after dinner, watching the stars come out, when he shifted to kneel on one knee in front of her. "What are you doing?" Victoria asked, though her heart had begun to pound. "Something I have been thinking about for weeks." Owen pulled a small box from his pocket. "I know I said I would not propose after 3 weeks. Well, it has been 2 months now, and I am more certain than ever. Victoria Dawson, you are the strongest, most capable, most fascinating woman I have ever met. You challenge me and inspire me and make me want to be a better man. I love you completely, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small emerald, the stone the same color as her eyes. Victoria stared at it, her throat tight with emotion. "Owen, She swallowed hard. "I am not good at being a wife. I do not know how to be what people expect." "I am not asking you to be what people expect. I am asking you to be exactly who you are, just as my wife instead of my partner." Owen took her hand. "We will figure out what our marriage looks like together. There is no rule that says you have to give up your work or change your ways. I want you, Victoria, all of you, exactly as you are." Tears welled in Victoria's eyes, surprising her. She had not cried in years, had prided herself on her toughness, but Owen's words cracked something open inside her. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." Owen slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. Rosa appeared in the doorway, having clearly been listening, and let out a whoop of joy. "I will start planning the wedding." She announced, "We will have a party, invite the whole town." "Something small," Victoria said quickly. "Please, Rosa, just a simple ceremony." "Simple," Rosa agreed, though her eyes sparkled with plans. "But beautiful. You deserve beautiful." They were married 3 weeks later in the parlor of the main house, with just a handful of people present. Charlie stood up as Owen's best man, and Rosa served as Victoria's attendant. The local preacher performed a brief ceremony, and Victoria wore a simple blue dress that Rosa had helped her make, the first dress she had owned in years. When Owen kissed her as his wife, Victoria felt the last of her walls crumble. She had been so determined to never need anyone, to never be vulnerable, but standing here in Owen's arms, she realized that love was not weakness. It was the greatest strength she possessed. The party afterward was small but joyful, with food and music and dancing. Victoria found herself laughing more than she had in years, swept up in the celebration and Owen's obvious happiness. When the last guests finally left as the moon rose high, Owen carried her over the threshold of their bedroom, both of them grinning like fools. "Hello, wife," he said, setting her down gently. "Hello, husband." Victoria began unbuttoning her dress. "That was not as terrible as I feared. You thought our wedding would be terrible. I thought being the center of attention would be terrible, but it was actually quite nice." She let the dress pool at her feet and stood before him in her shift. "Now are you going to stand there talking, or are you going to make love to your wife?" Owen needed no further encouragement. As summer faded into fall, their business grew. Owen's ranch became known throughout Arizona territory as the place to go for quality horses and expert training. Victoria's reputation spread far and wide, and they had to turn away clients because they simply could not take on any more animals. "We should hire help," Owen said one evening as they reviewed their accounts. "Another horse trainer at least, and maybe expand the facilities." "I have been thinking the same thing." Victoria leaned over his shoulder to look at the numbers. "We are doing well enough to afford it. But finding someone who trains horses the way I do will be difficult. We could teach someone, take on an apprentice." Victoria considered this. That could work. Someone young without bad habits already ingrained. They placed an advertisement in the Wilcox newspaper and several others across the territory, and within a month, they had 3 applicants. 2 were men in their 30s, who made it clear they thought they were applying to work for Owen, and were openly hostile when they realized Victoria would be their teacher. Owen sent them packing. The 3rd applicant was a 17-year-old boy named Samuel, rail, thin, and earnest, who rode up on a mule and asked if the position was still available. "You look a little young," Owen said, though not unkindly. "I am stronger than I look, sir, and I am good with horses. I have been working at the livery in town for 2 years, and before that, I helped my uncle with his freight business." Samuel twisted his hat in his hands. "I really need this job, sir. My mother is sick and my younger siblings need taking care of. I can work hard, I promise." Victoria appeared from the barn, wiping her hands on her pants. "What do you know about breaking horses?" Samuel turned to her, and to his credit, did not seem surprised to be addressed by a woman. "Not much, madam, but I am willing to learn. I know about feeding and grooming and basic care. And I know you should not hit them or yell at them, even when they are being difficult." "Why not?" Victoria challenged. "Because they are not being difficult on purpose. They are afraid or confused or in pain. Hitting them just makes it worse." Samuel's thin face was serious. "My uncle used to beat his horses, and they were always going lame or running off. The horses I take care of at the livery, I talk to them nice, and they do better." Victoria looked at Owen, who nodded slightly. "All right, Samuel, we will give you a trial period. 1 month. If you work out, the job is yours permanently. You will get room and board in the bunkhouse and a fair wage, with raises based on what you learn and how much you can do." Samuel's face lit up. "Thank you, madam. Thank you, sir. You will not regret this." He proved to be an excellent choice. Samuel was eager to learn, patient with the horses, and tireless in his work. He absorbed Victoria's teachings like a sponge and showed a natural talent for understanding horse behavior. Within 2 months, he was working with the simpler cases under Victoria's supervision, and by 6 months, he was handling intake and basic training on his own. "You were right," Owen told Victoria one evening as they watched Samuel work with a nervous filly in the round pen. "He is going to be very good at this. He has the right temperament, gentle but confident." Victoria leaned against the fence. "And he genuinely cares about the horses. You cannot teach that." Owen slipped an arm around her waist. "How are you feeling?" Victoria had been queasy for the past 2 weeks, and that morning she had confirmed what she suspected. "Still a little sick, but it passes. Rosa says it will get better after the first few months." "Are you happy about it?" Owen asked carefully. They had not been actively trying to prevent pregnancy, but they had not discussed it in detail either. Victoria turned to look at him, seeing the hope and uncertainty in his face. "I am terrified," she admitted. "I do not know how to be a mother. I have never even held a baby." "You will learn. Just like you learn everything else." Owen kissed her temple. "And you will not be doing it alone. We are in this together. I do not want to stop working. I cannot just sit in the house for 9 months. I am not asking you to. You keep working as long as you feel up to it, and we will figure out the rest as we go." Owen's hand came to rest on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby, our baby." Despite her fears, Victoria found herself smiling. "Yes, we are." The pregnancy was difficult at first. Victoria had never been prone to weakness, and the morning sickness that plagued her felt like a betrayal of her body. She pushed through it stubbornly, continuing to work with the horses even when she felt awful, until Owen and Rosa staged an intervention. "You need to rest," Rosa insisted, physically steering Victoria toward the house. "The horses will still be there tomorrow. I have work to do, and Samuel can handle it for 1 day. Owen took her other arm. "Please, Victoria, you are running yourself into the ground." She wanted to argue, but the truth was she felt exhausted in a way she had never experienced before. "Fine. 1 day." It ended up being 3 days before she felt well enough to return to the corrals, and even then, Owen insisted she stick to light work only. Victoria chafed at the restrictions, but had to admit that she felt better when she did not push herself quite so hard. As her pregnancy progressed, Victoria's body changed in ways that both fascinated and frustrated her. She had always been lean and strong, and watching her belly swell with their child was strange. But Owen's delight in every change made it easier to accept, and his reverence when he felt the baby kick for the first time brought tears to her eyes. "There is a person in there," he whispered, his hand spread across her stomach. "Our person." "Our very active person," Victoria said as the baby kicked again. "I think we might be in trouble with this one." She worked until she was 7 months along, at which point Owen and Rosa joined forces to insist she stop. "Just for the last 2 months, Owen argued. "You can supervise from the porch. You can tell Samuel and me what to do, but no more going into the corrals." Victoria knew he was right, even if she hated to admit it. She had gotten slower and more awkward, and the horses could sense her changed balance. It was not safe for her or the baby. "All right, but I am still making all the training decisions. I would not have it any other way." Those last 2 months were some of the hardest of Victoria's life. She had never been good at sitting still, and watching others do the work she loved made her restless and irritable. Owen bore the brunt of her mood swings with patient good humor, and Rosa plied her with special treats and distracting gossip. In late May of 1885, 2 weeks before her due date, Victoria went into labor in the middle of the night. Owen woke to find her gripping the bedpost, her face pale and sweating. "The baby is coming," she gasped. Owen flew into action, sending for the midwife in town and rousing Rosa to help. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next afternoon. Owen stayed by Victoria's side the entire time, holding her hand and whispering encouragement even as she cursed him for getting her into this situation. "I am never doing this again," Victoria panted between contractions. "Whatever you want, love. Just keep breathing." Finally, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, their son entered the world with a furious wail. The midwife cleaned him up and placed him in Victoria's arms, and she stared down at the red-faced, squalling infant with a mixture of terror and overwhelming love. "He is perfect," Owen said, his voice choked with emotion. "Victoria, look what we made." "He is so small," Victoria whispered, touching one tiny fist with a trembling finger. "How is something so small even possible? You did so well." Owen kissed her sweaty forehead. "I am so proud of you." They named him Oliver, and he proved to be as strong-willed as his mother and as stubborn as his father. Victoria learned to hold him and feed him, and though she was clumsy at first, she soon found her way. She had approached motherhood the same way she approached everything else, with determination and a refusal to accept failure. Owen was a natural father, patient and loving, and watching him with their son made Victoria fall even deeper in love with him. In the quiet moments of the night, when she sat nursing Oliver while Owen dozed in the chair beside her, she thought about how much her life had changed. 2 years ago, she had been alone, wandering from town to town with no place to call home. Now she had a husband who loved her, a son who needed her, a business that was thriving, and roots that went deep into the Arizona soil. She had everything she had never known she wanted. When Oliver was 3 months old, Victoria returned to work part-time, bringing the baby with her in a cradle that Owen set up in the shade of the barn. She would work for an hour or two, then return to feed Oliver, then work again. It was not ideal, but it allowed her to stay connected to the horses she loved while still caring for her son. "You are going to raise that baby in the corrals," Owen teased. "Is that a problem?" "Not at all. He will probably be riding before he can walk." Owen scooped Oliver out of his cradle, holding him up in the afternoon light. "What do you think, little man? You want to be a horseman like your mother and father." Oliver gurgled and grabbed Owen's nose, making them both laugh. The business continued to grow. By the time Oliver was a year old, they had expanded the facilities and taken on a second apprentice, a young woman named Beth, who had shown up one day asking if Victoria would teach her. Victoria saw something of herself in Beth's fierce determination and took her on gladly. "It is good for Samuel to have help," she told Owen, "and it is good for young women to see that they can do this kind of work if they want to." "You are becoming an inspiration," Owen observed. "I heard some women in town talking about you the other day. They think you are remarkable." "They probably also think I am scandalous," Victoria said dryly. "Well, yes, that too, but mostly remarkable." Life settled into a comfortable pattern. Oliver grew into a bright, curious toddler who indeed seemed more interested in horses than anything else. He took his first steps in the barn, walking toward a patient mare that Victoria was grooming. His first word was horse, much to his mother's delight and his father's mock dismay. "I am teaching him Papa next," Owen insisted, "before he learns the names of all the horses on the ranch." When Oliver was 2, Victoria discovered she was pregnant again. This time the news brought joy rather than fear. though she was still anxious about how she would manage 2 children and continue working. "We will figure it out," Owen assured her. "We always do." Their daughter, Emma, arrived in early spring of 1888, an easier birth than Oliver's had been. She had Victoria's green eyes and Owen's dark hair, and her older brother was immediately besotted with her. "Baby," Oliver announced proudly to anyone who would listen. "My baby." "Our baby," Victoria corrected, but she was smiling. With 2 young children, Victoria had to cut back her hours even more, but she refused to stop working entirely. She trained horses in the early mornings and late afternoons, and spent the middle of the day with Oliver and Emma. Owen took over more of the direct training work, having learned enough from Victoria to handle most cases himself. They hired a young woman from town to help Rosa with the housework and childcare, giving Victoria the freedom to continue doing the work she loved. It was not always easy, juggling motherhood and business ownership, but Victoria discovered she had a talent for adaptation. "You are doing it all," Beth said admiringly one day as they worked together in the round pen while Oliver helped by feeding carrots to the horses and Emma napped in her cradle nearby. "Not perfectly," Victoria replied, "but good enough." That, she had learned, was the secret to happiness. Not perfection, but finding a way to build the life you wanted even when it was messy and complicated. Not giving up who you were, but finding space for all the parts of yourself to exist together. Years passed. Oliver and Emma grew, both of them learning to ride almost as soon as they could walk. The Lancaster Ranch became known throughout the Southwest as the premier place for quality horses and expert training. Samuel became a full partner in the business, and eventually married Beth in a ceremony that reminded Victoria of her own wedding, simple but full of joy. Victoria and Owen grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. They still worked side by side every day, still fell into bed together every night, still challenged and inspired each other constantly. When Victoria turned 35, Owen threw her a surprise party, inviting friends from all over the territory. Victoria was mortified by the attention but touched by the outpouring of affection. She had spent so many years as an outsider, not quite fitting in anywhere, and now she was surrounded by people who valued and respected her. "You did this," she told Owen that night as they stood on their porch, watching the last guests depart. "You gave me this life." "We built it together," Owen corrected, pulling her close. "You took a chance on me, on us. You stayed when you could have left." Victoria thought back to that day 11 years ago when Owen had asked her to break his horses. She remembered his offer, his plea for her to stay. She thought about the 5 problem horses that had brought them together, especially the bay stallion who had needed her gentleness as much as she had needed to give it. "Best decision I ever made," she said, and kissed her husband as the stars came out above the Arizona desert. Oliver graduated from childhood to adolescence, showing his father's business sense and his mother's way with horses. Emma developed a talent for training dogs, and decided she wanted to expand the ranch's offerings to include working dogs for ranches and farms. Both children were confident and capable, raised by parents who taught them that strength came in many forms and that kindness was never weakness. The bay stallion, the one who had been so broken and afraid, lived a long life and sired many foals before finally passing peacefully at the age of 23. Victoria was with him at the end, stroking his neck and murmuring the same soothing words she had spoken when they first met. "Thank you," she whispered. "You changed my life." Owen found her later crying in the barn and held her while she grieved. "He was special," she said against Owen's chest. "He taught me that healing is always possible, no matter how deep the wounds go." "He was not the only one," Owen replied. "You taught me that too." More years passed. Oliver fell in love with a schoolteacher from Tucson and brought her home to meet his parents. Emma decided to go to veterinary school back east, one of the first women accepted into the program, and made her family proud. Victoria and Owen's hair turned gray, and their bodies moved more slowly, but their passion for their work and each other never dimmed. They handed over more of the daily operations to Samuel and Beth, but still spent their days in the corrals, still found satisfaction in helping a troubled horse find peace. On their 20th anniversary, Owen took Victoria to the same spot where he had first proposed, on the porch of their home overlooking the land they had built together. "You have any regrets?" he asked, holding her hand just as he had that first night. Victoria pretended to think about it. "I regret nothing. Well, maybe I regret not meeting you sooner. We met exactly when we were supposed to." Owen lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. "You rode into town at exactly the right moment, with exactly the skills I needed and the heart I did not know I was looking for." "You asked me to stay forever," Victoria remembered. "You said to break your horses and stay forever. And you did. You broke more than my horses, Victoria. You broke down every wall I had around my heart and made me whole. You did the same for me." Victoria leaned into him, comfortable and content. "I love you, Owen Lancaster. I loved you from the moment I saw you standing on that street watching me, even though I did not know it yet. I loved you too. I think I loved you before I even met you, like my soul knew you were coming." They sat together as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, just as it had on countless evenings before. The horses grazed peacefully in the pastures. Somewhere in the house, Rosa was singing as she prepared dinner. In the barn, Samuel was likely checking on the new foals. This was home. This was family. This was everything Victoria had never dared to dream of, and everything she now could not imagine living without. When Owen had challenged her all those years ago to break his horses and stay forever, she had not understood what he was really offering. It was not just a job or even just a relationship. It was a chance to heal, to be seen, to be loved exactly as she was. It was an invitation to build something lasting with someone who valued her strength instead of being threatened by it. She had taken the chance. She had stayed. And in doing so, she had found not just a home, but herself. Oliver came home with his wife and their first child, a daughter they named Victoria after her grandmother. Emma returned from school with her degree and stories of her adventures, ready to start the veterinary practice she had been planning. The ranch thrived under new leadership, but remained true to the principles Victoria and Owen had established: patience, kindness, respect for the animals, and a belief that every creature deserved a second chance. Victoria held her granddaughter and looked into eyes the same green as her own, and thought about legacy. She had spent so many years believing she had nothing to pass on, no value beyond the work of her hands. Now she saw how wrong she had been. She had built an empire of compassion, had raised children who understood that strength and gentleness were not opposites but partners, had created a place where broken things could heal. "What are you thinking?" Owen asked, sitting down beside her. "I am thinking that I am the luckiest woman alive," Victoria replied. "I am thinking that when I rode into Wilcox 20 years ago, I thought I was just looking for another job. Instead, I found everything. We both did." Owen put his arm around her shoulders, and they sat together with their family around them, the business they had built thriving and decades of love behind them and, they hoped, still ahead. The horses in the corrals whinnied as the evening settled over the ranch, and somewhere a coyote called to the rising moon. The desert wind carried the scent of sage and dust and possibility, the same wind that had blown the day Victoria first arrived. She had broken horses that other men had given up on. But more importantly, she had broken free of her own limitations, her own fears, her own belief that she had to be alone to be strong. And Owen, the cowboy who had looked at her that first day and seen not just a horse breaker but a partner, a lover, a future, had kept his word. He had given her forever, and she had given it back to him, freely and completely. In the end, that was what mattered. Not the business they had built, or the reputation they had earned, or the money they had made. It was the life they had created together, the love they had nurtured through easy times and hard, the family they had raised, and the knowledge that they had chosen each other every single day for 20 years, and would continue to choose each other for all the days that remained. As the stars came out and the ranch settled into peaceful night, Victoria leaned her head on Owen's shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for asking me to stay." "Thank you for saying yes," Owen whispered back. And in the warm Arizona darkness, surrounded by the fruits of their labor and the family they had created, they sat together in perfect contentment. Two souls who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful and lasting from nothing but determination, love, and an unshakable faith in second chances. The years continued to unfold with a gentleness that Victoria had not known was possible. She and Owen aged gracefully into their later years, their bodies slowing but their minds sharp and their love undiminished. They watched Oliver take over the daily operations of the ranch with his wife by his side, teaching his own children the same lessons he had learned. Emma's veterinary practice became the most respected in the territory, and she never forgot the principles her mother had taught her about treating animals with respect and understanding. She brought that same compassion to her work, and people traveled from hundreds of miles away to seek her expertise. Victoria still worked with horses when she could, though Owen worried about her taking on the more difficult cases. "Let the younger ones handle the dangerous animals," he would say, but Victoria just laughed. "I am not dead yet, old man. I can still gentle a nervous mare." "I know you can. I just want you to live forever." "That is the plan." On a cool October evening in 1904, Victoria and Owen celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary. The entire ranch gathered for the occasion, along with friends from across Arizona. Oliver and his wife had given them 6 grandchildren in total. Emma had married late but happily, to a fellow veterinarian who shared her passion for animals, and they had 3 children of their own. The party was loud and joyful, filled with music and dancing and laughter. Victoria, now 64 years old with silver threaded through her blonde hair, danced with Owen under the stars just as they had on their wedding night 4 decades earlier. 40 years, Owen marveled, his own hair completely gray now but his eyes still that same whiskey color she had fallen in love with. "Where did the time go?" "Into every day we spent together," Victoria replied. "Into every horse we trained, every child we raised, every sunrise we watched from this porch. The time went into living, Owen. What better place for it to go?" He pulled her closer. "I would do it all again exactly the same way." "So would I." Victoria rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Even the hard parts, even the scary parts, all of it led to this. Around them, their family laughed and celebrated, the children running through the evening shadows, the grandchildren playing with the dogs Emma had trained. The horses in the corrals were quiet, well-fed and content. The desert stretched out beyond the ranch in all directions, vast and beautiful and eternal. This was the life Victoria had built from nothing but courage and skill, and a willingness to take a chance on a cowboy who had seen something in her that no one else had bothered to look for. This was the legacy of that single decision to stay, to trust, to love. "Tell me again," Owen said softly. "Tell me about the day we met." Victoria smiled because he asked this sometimes, wanting to hear the story of how they became them. "You were standing outside your office watching me ride into town. I could feel your eyes on me before I even looked your way. You were covered in dust, but you sat that horse like a queen. I thought to myself, there is someone who knows exactly who she is. I did not, though. Not really. I knew how to break horses, but I did not know how to be happy. You taught me that." "No," Owen shook his head. "You taught yourself. I just gave you a reason to try." They danced in comfortable silence for a while, moving slowly to the music, lost in their own world even surrounded by celebration. "I have had a good life," Victoria said eventually. "A life beyond anything I imagined was possible for someone like me, and it is all because you looked at me that first day and saw a partner instead of a problem. You were never a problem. You were an answer to a question I had not known how to ask." Owen kissed her forehead. "You are still my answer, Victoria. Every day." As the party wound down and the guests began to depart, Victoria and Owen retreated to their porch, watching the moon rise over the land they loved. They sat in the same chairs they had occupied for 40 years, holding hands like newlyweds, still finding comfort and joy in each other's presence. "You remember what you said to me?" Victoria asked. "That first day when you asked me to stay. I said you could break any horse that men gave up on, and I asked you to break mine and stay forever. You never told me which part was more important, breaking the horses or staying forever." Owen turned to look at her, his weathered face soft with love. "The staying, always the staying. The horses were just the excuse to keep you close until I could figure out how to make you want to stay for me." "I wanted to stay for you from the beginning," Victoria admitted. "I was just too scared to admit it." "I know, but you stayed anyway, and that is what mattered. You felt the fear and stayed anyway." They sat together in the darkness, two people who had built an extraordinary life from ordinary materials. Hard work, trust, respect, and love that deepened with every passing year. They had weathered storms and celebrated triumphs, raised children and built a business, and through it all, they had chosen each other. The desert wind whispered through the sage, carrying with it the promise of another day, another chance to wake up together and face whatever came their way. Victoria squeezed Owen's hand. "I love you. I have loved you for 40 years, and I will love you for 40 more if we are lucky enough to get them." "I love you too," Owen replied. "My wild horse breaker, my gentle wife, my partner in everything. You are my whole heart, Victoria Lancaster." And there, on the porch of the home they had made together, under the vast Arizona sky they had claimed as their own, they sat in perfect peace. Two souls who had found each other when they needed it most, who had built something lasting and true, and who would love each other until the end of their days and beyond. The story of how Victoria rode into Wilcox and changed Owen's life, how he had asked her to break his horses and stay forever, how she had done both, became a legend passed down through their family. Their grandchildren told it to their own children, and those children told it to theirs, a testament to the power of taking chances and the beauty of love built on mutual respect and shared dreams. But for Victoria and Owen, it was not a legend. It was simply their life, lived fully and without regret, every single perfect, difficult, joyful, challenging day of it. And as they sat together watching the stars wheel overhead, they knew with certainty that they had gotten everything right where it mattered most. They had found each other. They had built a life together. They had loved without reservation or fear, and that, in the end, was the greatest triumph of all.